Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, a new survey shows 4 in 5 U.S. biotech companies contract with Chinese firms. A look at Beijing's quest for American DNA and lawmakers' attempts to stop it. Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping set to announce more investment in Hungary. This as he meets with the nation's top officials during a trip to Europe. Serbia arrests a number of Falun Gong practitioners ahead of a visit by Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. We spoke with one of those detained.
There were 6 practitioners and 2 family members who don't practice, including my own brother. And at some point, plainclothes police just came to our doors and asked us to go with them.
Billions at risk. Over $9 billion from American investors could be caught in the legal crossfire between TikTok and the U.S. government. More on the details. China's hand deep in the U.S. biotech supply chain. A new survey finds almost 80% of American biotech companies contract with Chinese firms, and decoupling from them could be a long game. Some say switching partners could take up to 8 years. The world's largest biotech trade association, called Bio, conducted the survey. It sampled over 120 small biotech firms. This comes as a bill is advancing in Congress. It aims to block Beijing from using U.S. tax dollars to access biometric data on Americans and from developing bioweapons that could target Americans. If passed, the bill would ban federal agencies from giving contracts, grants, and loans to Chinese biotech firms. 4 companies are in the crosshairs: BGI Group, MGI Complete Genomics, and WuXi AppTec. These companies are the champions of Beijing's biotech ambitions. The Chinese regime is looking to become the world leader in biotechnology by 2035. It's building the world's largest biodatabase and has been harvesting Americans' DNA data. Here's how. Chinese companies provide cheap genomic sequencing services to hospitals and health institutions across the U.S. What's more, China's BGI is the leading provider of genetic sequencing equipment on the U.S. market. It denies providing data to Chinese authorities. But under Chinese law, all Chinese firms must hand over their data if Beijing asks for it. The Pentagon previously called BGI a Chinese military company operating in the U.S. Mike Gallagher, former chair of the House Select China Committee, said Beijing could potentially use the genetic data collected by BGI to develop bioweapons to target Americans. DNA can reveal a lot of information about a person, like whether they're more prone to addiction or at risk of getting cancer. A Reuters report said Beijing could use American DNA to engineer pathogens to specifically target the U.S. population or food supply. Another Chinese company, WuXi, invested in 23andMe, a company known for its DNA testing kits. It said customer data has never been shared with a Chinese company. U.S. intelligence has said American healthcare data may be particularly attractive to Beijing. Chinese leader Xi Jinping on his 3rd and final stop in Europe. While in Hungary, he's expected to announce a string of investments into the nation's most crucial industries, including electric batteries and critical infrastructure. Xi met with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Budapest. Touting their friendship, Xi said Hungary is, quote, the #1 target in the Central Eastern European region for Chinese investment. Hungarian officials said at least 16 bilateral agreements will be signed during Xi's trip. Before Hungary, Xi also visited France and Serbia. He skipped a trip to the site of China's former embassy in Belgrade, which was accidentally bombed by NATO missiles in 1999. Analysts said Xi did so because he didn't want to trigger tensions with the West. China sees Hungary as a crucial gateway to the European market. And Hungary is the first member of the European Union to sign up for China's Belt and Road Initiative. The ambitious infrastructure project is largely seen as a way for Beijing to expand economic influence overseas. Aside from infrastructure, Hungary is also looking to become one of the world's leading suppliers of lithium batteries, with help from China. In 2022, the nation announced a record of nearly $8 billion worth of Chinese investments into its electric battery plants. A Hungarian lawmaker was stopped by a group of Chinese nationals in Budapest. This as he attempted to put up European Union flags on a bridge. The group claimed they were volunteers for the Chinese embassy, and they wanted to make sure there weren't any Tibetan or Taiwanese flags being displayed.
The United Front works with hundreds or thousands of people in Hungary, and they're all paying attention so that a Tibetan or Taiwanese flag isn't displayed even by accident. And they do so while there is supposedly freedom of speech in Europe, but not if Winnie the Pooh is here.
Xi Jinping!
China's United Front Works Department is known in the West as Beijing's propaganda department. As Xi's visit continues, some pro-Tibet activists took to the streets, chanting slogans like "Dictator Xi Jinping." Hungary often finds itself at odds with the U.S. and the European Union over a number of issues, one being its close relations with China and Russia. Hungary's prime minister has rejected pressures from the West to reduce ties with Beijing. Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping is still in Europe. He received a red carpet welcome on Wednesday from Serbia, one of China's more friendly partners in Europe. In a move likely to appease the Chinese regime, Serbian authorities arrested several practitioners of Falun Gong ahead of Xi's visit and released them after Xi left the country. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a meditation practice heavily persecuted in China. Here's more.
One of the detainees, Dejan Markovic, told the Epoch Times that authorities arrested 6 practitioners plus 2 of their relatives. His brother and an 80-year-old woman were among them. They were detained for about 24 hours in several locations. Markovic said the police boss said he knew the practitioners were good people, but was forced to follow orders. According to the arrest warrant, Serbian authorities accused the practitioners of posing a serious threat to persons under international protection. But once the Chinese leader left the country, another document was handed to the detainees, saying the threat doesn't exist anymore. Markovic called the government's statements the biggest nonsense. He said according to this logic, anyone who ever said anything against China could be detained for security reasons. He says he's convinced the targeted arrests were a result of orders from the Chinese Communist Party. The Falun Gong practitioners plan on suing the government over the detention. As of now, Serbian authorities haven't publicly commented on the matter. Serbia shares close ties with China and relies heavily on Beijing's billion-dollar investments. The Chinese regime launched a nationwide suppression against Falun Gong 25 years ago. It also exports its persecution beyond its borders. Falun Gong is a spiritual discipline that consists of meditative exercises and moral principles.
Following the arrest of several Falun Gong practitioners by Serbian authorities, NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with one of the detainees who was released once Xi left the country.
The move by Serbian authorities occurred just days after Russian authorities raided 5 homes and arrested 4 Falun Gong practitioners, also ahead of a planned meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Xi. The regime has sought to export its persecution of Falun Gong beyond its borders since 1999. Falun Gong is a spiritual discipline that consists of meditative exercises and moral principles. Business owner Dejan Markovic was one of those detained.
There were 6 practitioners and 2 family members who don't practice, including my own brother. And at some point, plainclothes police just came to our doors and asked us to go with them. You don't even get a pillow there. And of course, you don't get a toothbrush. And you get very little food, and you don't have a lavatory in the rooms.
Markovic says those arrested included an elderly woman nearing 80 years old, another woman almost 70 who had previously battled cancer, and a third woman around 60 years old.
So I wonder, are we that dangerous to Xi Jinping? He came here with 400 policemen on his side, and I'm sure that at least 3,000 policemen were engaged here to protect him, and still they're afraid of 8 people, among them one lady close to 80.
An arrest warrant issued for Markovic stated that he was suspected of posing a serious threat to persons under international protection. After Xi left the country, he and the other detainees were handed a document saying the threat doesn't exist anymore. The business owner says this isn't the first time the Serbian government has followed the will of the CCP. In 2019, he says they tried to hold a premiere of a documentary called Blacklisted about the illegal arrest of Falun Gong practitioners. The film was banned from the first 3 venues they found, but the authorities couldn't ban it from the 4th as it was owned by an Austrian company.
And during that event, I know that one of the venue directors said that she was contacted by a secretary from Ministry of External Affairs, and this secretary said that Chinese ambassador told him that she will leave the country if the film is premiered.
Serbia, a member of China's Belt and Road Initiative, relies heavily on billions of dollars in investment from China. Markovic says this cooperation comes with a heavy price.
It's not that they only want to build bridges and roads, they also introduce their totalitarian regime and control over people and things like that.
Markovic says practicing Falun Gong has dramatically improved his life.
I was not ill for one day for 19 years. I have a lot of energy. I do my job much better than before. I have family relationships much better than before.
NTD reached out to the Serbian authorities. We are still waiting to hear back from them. Those detained haven't been charged with any crimes. Markovic says that the practitioners plan to sue the government over the detention. Falun Gong practitioners in Serbia have previously brought forth 2 suits against the government, one over arrests in 2014, which they won in the country's highest court. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
With Chinese-made smart cars hitting the road, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo hints at drastic actions against what she dubs the smartphones on wheels. Could a ban be looming? NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma brings us more.
The U.S. could actually ban Chinese-made connected vehicles. So these are smart cars that are connected to the internet, or the U.S. could impose restrictions on them. So this is according to our Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo. Yesterday, she made comments, and it was the first indication on a ban that could be on the table here. So the Commerce Department is reviewing public comments on a probe the Biden administration launched in February into whether Chinese vehicle imports pose national security risks. And Raimondo said that the agency needs to digest all the data and figure out what action is needed to be taken here. She said the department could take extreme action, for example, saying no Chinese connected vehicles in the United States, or some other measures, other responses, including safeguards and guardrails. So Raimondo said she was concerned about Chinese connected vehicles, which could collect massive amounts of data on Americans, including potentially patterns of driving, who the drivers are, and what they say even in their car and where they're going. So she's adding that the U.S. needs to take the threat much more seriously than it is.
A warning to U.S. investors. A report says U.S. investment funds could be exposed to TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance, the total sum in the billions of dollars. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
U.S. money invested in TikTok? A new report says a number of U.S. pensions, university endowments, and other institutional investors may have exposure to TikTok's owner, ByteDance. This is from a new report by a bipartisan advocacy organization, Future Union. The report lists the involvement of some of the most notable public pension funds and university endowments, along with how much exposure they have to funds tied to ByteDance or TikTok. Andrew King is a venture capitalist and the author of the report.
And that's what we're calling out in this report is they've invested with funds. Those funds have chosen to invest in China or companies like ByteDance.
The report states that the total amount of identifiable exposure is over $9 billion.
The middleman is the venture capital, private equity, hedge fund, whoever's in the middle that makes the investment decisions. The source of that capital is the U.S. pension funds, university endowments. These are not dollars that the pension funds and endowments and university foundations and nonprofits have put into ByteDance. This is that secondary process.
To get an idea of how widespread the investments are across the United States, here are the states with public pensions invested in funds tied to ByteDance/TikTok investments. The states with university endowments invested in funds tied to ByteDance TikTok investments. States with at least one public pension invested in funds with direct connections to ByteDance, and states with at least one university endowment investing in funds with direct ties to investments in ByteDance. King says since funds and endowments don't have to disclose all the details of their investments.
So this is the best information that we can get from numerous private and public sources, short of having being privy to the actual details of what they're investing in, which is all proprietary and private.
He says there's much more information needed to accurately assess the situation and how much is at risk. TikTok just this week sued the U.S. government to block a new law requiring either ByteDance to sell the app or be removed from the app stores in the U.S. Billions could get stuck in limbo and tied to the outcome of how that plays out.
What we'd like to see is those pension funds endowments to make public the investments in China.
King said he hopes to use this nonprofit to catalyze the private sector to make a difference and take a stand against autocratic countries, China for the most part. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Coming up, the Biden administration is hosting China's climate envoy in Washington, D.C. An analyst joins us to discuss how the Chinese regime may be trying to leverage climate talks against American interests.
Every time we try to work with China on these agreements, it's only pushing us further into dependency on Chinese manufacturing and supposed trust on getting their climate arrangements in check.
The United States emerges as Germany's new top trading partner, surpassing China for the first time in 8 years. A look at the latest development. And some Olympic athletes are losing confidence in the World Anti-Doping Agency. The regulator is under fire for its handling of failed drug tests on Chinese swimmers. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.